Yo, what's cracking? This your homeboy Ice Cube, and you tuned in to Everything Snowboarding and More podcast. You know what it is, baby.
Hey everybody, this is Mike with the Mountain Weekly News. Welcome back to episode number 56 of the Everything Snowboarding, Outdoors, and More podcast. This week's podcast is being brought to you by Magnum Bikes. Magnum Bikes is some of our favorite e-bikes based in Salt Lake City. For more information on Magnum Bikes, check out magnumbikes.com. This week's special guest is Yoni Kayman. Yoni is the founder of Magnum Bikes. We actually had the opportunity to take these bikes out, do some downhill riding at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, as well as around in the Tetons, and we were really impressed with just how well these e-bikes ride. This was a line of the e-mountain bikes that we tested out with Magnum Bikes, and we're going to let Yoni tell you all about Magnum as well as this line that we tested. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this week's guest is Yoni Kayman. Yoni Kayman is the CEO and founder of Magnum Bikes, some of our favorite e-mountain bikes that we've tested as of late. Yoni, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike.
So Yoni, one of the things that stood out with Magnum Bikes, you guys are based right now in Salt Lake City. We love that, we're here in Jackson. But where was the brand started and kind of what was the background for Magnum Bikes?
Sure. A little bit of the background. I actually started the brand overseas in Israel. I grew up in New York, but I was moved out, traveled back and forth. I saw e-bikes taking off in Europe a lot earlier than they took off in the U.S. So when I was over in Tel Aviv, e-bikes were just coming out into the market. They weren't really even legal yet. And I went over to China where they were starting to manufacture them for export. And a couple of years later, I started actually originally manufacturing for other brands because nobody really had a clue about e-bikes. Even the big bicycle brands in Israel had no idea. I became kind of like the expert over there. And after a few years of doing that, I opened my own brand, the Magnum brand. And then in 2015, so that was in 2013 where Magnum was officially launched. 2015, moved over to the U.S., set up shop in Salt Lake City with a good friend of mine, Jesse Lappin, who's now the COO and partner of the company, and the rest is kind of history.
And can you talk more about how e-bikes were kind of a bigger thing in Europe, 10 years ago versus kind of now? It seems like we're just playing catch up in the United States. I mean, for me, I'm super intrigued. Is there like in Israel? Are the Israelis? Is the e-bike? Is that a massive thing right now? Just like most of the other places in Europe?
Absolutely. Bicycles in general are more popular and more commonly used as a mode of transportation in Europe. It might be because of the culture, but it also very well might be just because of the size and the way the urbanization kind of has been built out. In the U.S., we have a lot of space. People use their cars to go to your local shop. You can drive a good couple miles where, the average person in Europe is living in much more condensed space. So bikes in general, are much bigger as a mode of transportation. But then e-bikes, when they came onto the market, I want to say 20 years ago, they were really locally used in Asia. And they're really kind of these like lead acid batteries, motorbike type of e-bikes. That's where like the original, maybe 20, 30 years ago, even they were using them in China and Southeast Asia. And then when they started developing them for export, that wasn't a good product for export. So Europeans who are really into biking, they started consuming and demanding, a regular bicycle, but that's something that's going to be able to get me further, easier, expand the demographic to older ages, and so on. And then the U.S. really did play catch up in a very big way. In 2014, when I first demoed in the Interbike show in Las Vegas, it was literally like a corner with like a small green carpet and like maybe a handful of booths with e-bikes. Nothing like it is today. And the Eurobike show, in contrast, by 2014, had already integrated e-bikes pretty much into every part of their exhibition. So, light years away in some ways, but the U.S. has really caught up, or at least it's on that trajectory.
And then, as far as picking Salt Lake City to be kind of your location in the United States, one of the things that we're noticing is that, mountain bikes haven't really taken off yet here in the United States the way that they are in Europe. When I talk to people that are, riding mountain bikes in Europe or recreating or taking vacations to go to Europe, it is pretty heavy. Most people ride mountain bikes, and if they're going out riding, whatever they have is an e-bike style. And one of the things that when we got your bikes to test, we tested the Vertex as well as the Peak T5, and we were like, wow, like this is amazing. What we're dealing with is there's a lot of places here that really aren't allowing e-bikes yet on the Forest Service trails. And so we're trying to work with the land managers. But was that kind of one of the reasons, being in Salt Lake City, because Park City and all the different mountain biking, were you kind of thinking ahead like, hey, this not only is the e-bike thing going to be big in the US, but the e-mountain biking segment is something that just really, I don't think we've even come close to tapping into it.
We have not. We really have not. And the truth is that to get to the niche markets, I would say e-mountain biking is still considered, and really all like, semi-professional sports that take a lot of, expensive equipment and a lot of experience, knowledge, athleticism, et cetera, like road biking and mountain biking and, a lot of other sports that fit that category. It really, in my opinion, will come from the mainstream as an overflow. So like when everybody's riding e-bikes, then the mountain bikers are gonna ride e-bikes as well. They're not going to be jumping into it first because the type of bikes that they have and the type of skill set that they possess doesn't really demand from them an e-bike. Although getting up the mountain, if you notice, a lot of people are taking the lifts up. In my opinion, that's a big miss. If you have an e-bike, you're not taking the lift up. You're actually experiencing and enjoying, getting up the mountain, and you can, even if even if you're not like a Superman, a super biker. So there is a miss over there, but at the same time, I don't think that it could start. The e-bike revolution is not going to start from the professionals and the enthusiasts. It's going to start from the mainstream, and it's going to spill over into that. That's what I'm seeing.
And then as far as technology with e-bikes, we're a lot of times we're trying to explain to people about the different drives. And when the Vertex arrived, you had the mid-drive motor versus the kind of rear hub. What was kind of the reasoning for doing that with that specific bike, and just kind of e-bikes in general, for a consumer that doesn't really understand the difference between, where the motor is either located in the back or kind of right under the pedals? What would be the benefit of either or in that situation?
Sure. Look, I mean, Magnum bikes, our mission really is to get the masses onto the e-bikes. And that's not gonna, that's you need to be price sensitive. And mid-drive motors, although they do provide a value, specifically when it comes to mountain bikes, I'll get to that in a second. But not everybody's going to want to spend the extra money for the mid-drives. What does the mid-drive actually provide? The mid-drives, what it does is the motor sits on the chain drive. So where, as the hub drive is in a fixed position and it's constantly, putting out a certain amount of torque based on the size of the wheel, it's kind of in a fixed position in the center of the hub. And your chain and your gears will allow you to pedal and kind of assist or, take some of the stress off of the system. But that stress is a constant when it's fixed in the hub. Whereas opposed to, when your motor is right in the center and it's sitting on the drivetrain, what that means is that it's moving your chain very similar to the way that you do when you pedal. When you pedal, you get to move the crank and the chain. And, when you change the gears, all of a sudden the pedaling becomes easier or harder based on the gear ratio. And the motor benefits from that same gear ratio change when it's sitting on the drivetrain as a mid-drive as a mid-drive motor. So there is definitely a big advantage, I would say, for mountain biking, specifically for off-road biking, in that you are facing a lot of different types of terrain. You're facing uphill, you're facing resistance on different types of terrain, gravel, dirt, paved road. It's not all paved, maybe none of it is. So that, the mid drive really utilizes the gear ratio and will allow it to respond better based on, you're choosing the gear and your pedaling is really in sync with the motor. It's kind of one with the motor. You're pedaling together with the motor. You're moving the chain as the motor does as well. So there's definitely an advantage for off-road biking for mid-drives. A lot of people in Europe prefer the mid-drive. Again, I think it comes down to, in many cases, a price value feature. So when you're riding on the road, on a paved road or a bike path, it doesn't really make that much of an impact. There's not really much of a difference between a hub drive and a mid drive, from my experience. Some people find it, appealing, and there are other people that actually find the hub drive more appealing because you get that power, 100%. You get the power like immediately, as opposed to going through the chain drive based on the gears. It's kind of a preference, but in my opinion, and with Magnum bikes, the reason why we chose the mid drive for the Vertex is because it really is going to be able to take the terrain properly.
Yeah, and I really like the pricing that Magnum has done. The kind of both the bikes that we're talking about right now are right in that $2,200 to I think $3,100 range, or $3,199. And a lot of times people ask us, they say, well, how come, if I go to a local bike store, I'm seeing these e-bikes, an e-bike is $6,000. Why are there other e-bikes that are, in this $2,000 to $3,000 range? And somehow now you're able to do a bike with a mid-drive motor and all the bells and whistles for kind of half the price as what we're seeing some of the maybe bigger name e-bike brands sell for at the moment.
Yeah, our top model, the Vertex, is actually our most expensive model, and it tops out at $2,999. So we're trying not to go over that $3,000 price point. We are using the right components. We're trying to get the most value for the most bang for your buck, basically. And if you compare our $2,999 Vertex to some of the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 more expensive mountain bikes, e-bikes, you'll notice that, number one, we don't have all of the highest level mechanical components. I mean, you can get a non-electric mountain bike for $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 if you want something really high end. And there's plenty of room to go and increase the price based on the mechanical components. What I found is that when you include the electrical system, a lot of the nuances of the mechanical components are kind of moot. They're not really being used. The electric system kind of overpowers them. So if you're looking at, really high-end gears and some of the other, components on the bike that you feel when you're riding, the suspension is still going to be there. It's still going to be an important, feature. But the gear train, the drive train, the gears, some of the other features like, maybe the hydraulic brakes, you don't need necessarily the same components for a mountain bike that is a non-electric bike if you're not going to really be doing the exact same things. Some of these downhill bikes, you're not going to be taking an e-bike and looking at it as a downhill bike, because why would you put an electric system to ride downhill, right?
Totally.
So a lot of the components that are used for really expensive mountain bikes are not going to be used over here, and we just kind of balanced it out and figured out which components will really make a difference with the electric system, and made sure that we would hit that price point where our range is roughly from $1,500 up to $3,000. We have all different types of bikes, for city, beach cruisers, smaller bikes, folding bikes, mountain bikes, hybrid bikes, etc.
Well, I guess that, coming from maybe that person that's very used to, that has their traditional analog, mountain bike, and they're used to certain, components. Okay, I have SRAM, or I use this. When we first got the Vertex, I thought the shifting system reminded me of the SRAM. I was like, well, it's not Shimano, and so I just assumed it was SRAM. And then it wasn't until we started going through the review and doing everything, I was like, oh wow, they're using a different system, like a system that I haven't heard of, but like we rode that bike really hard uphill and downhill and had no problems. And so I almost wonder, it seems like you're almost onto something where it's like, hey, maybe you don't need necessarily the name brand parts, or maybe the weight thing's not as important if, again, there's already going to be a motor, these bikes are already going to have a certain weight to it. Getting it to be more expensive to shave a couple grams, that's for a whole different set of
It's a whole
bike
different
riders.
category.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're using microshift, 10-speed microshift advent, which is actually, very good. If you've test ridden it, you can feel that it's really good. It's very efficient, and again, it's a matter of getting the most value to the customer, so that more people just get on e-bikes. That's really our objective.
So outside of Salt Lake City, where can people find out more about Magnum bikes? I mean, obviously, we want to send people to your website to check out everything, but are there also kind of local like demo centers or places that people, because I think that everybody, all of my staff, all my photographers that we put on these bikes, and, everybody's kind of leery, especially with the e-mountain bikes. They're like, oh, I don't know. Everyone was like, wow, this is epic. Like these pedal nice. I mean, they pedaled efficiently, even with the motor being off. Like we were like, if this battery was to die on you, you'd still be able to pedal this bike back and you're not going to be completely upset. I mean, it rode like a real bicycle. And so that to us was like, we want to help share this Magnum story and really tell people, I mean, not all e-bikes are the same. And hey, it might not just be if you're only looking at the top of the thing for the price, thinking, okay, I gotta, there's bikes in this $10,000 range, that's got to be the best. Well, hey, now in this $2,000 to $3,000 range, there's some really, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, I think the sweet spot for an e-bike's right around $2,000 to $3,000, and you can buy as good of a bike as you need. I mean, I just don't really see that need for the $5,000 to $10,000 ones.
Absolutely. I think that's going to make the difference in getting people, as many people as possible on e-bikes. Like it's a revolution. We want to be part of it. We want to move everybody to that direction. We have about 250 shops across the U.S. That are selling our bikes, and you can demo them, in those, any one of those shops. We have 5 of our own retail locations. We actually have one in Park City. We have one in Salt Lake City. We have one in St. George in Utah. We have Encinitas, California, Scottsdale, Arizona. Those are Magnum owned bike shops, where you can obviously come in and get a free rental, free test ride. Anybody that rents bikes, that will go towards your purchase if you decide later to purchase an e-bike. We're trying to plug into every location possible, getting as much hype around our brand as possible. We need people like you who are really, at the forefront of the industry, reviewing all the products, to really tell our story over, give us that platform, because we believe we have an amazing product to offer at an affordable price.
And speaking to you, obviously, I mean, you walk the walk and you can talk the talk. I mean, it seems like, you were first involved in the e-bike industry in 2010 and then, 2013. And I mean, so you're not kind of a fly by night. We're seeing a lot of new companies that it seems like they're figuring out the factories in China and they're saying, okay, this is the logo I want and this is the name of the company. And, it's their first year out. And then all of a sudden the bikes and the frames look pretty much identical to everything else we're seeing. Your bikes kind of stood out. They were different. I haven't seen these particular frame styles yet. And so just the way that they rode, I mean, everything. If people want to find out more information about your bikes, where is the best place to do that?
I mean, you go to magnumbikes.com. That's our website. You'll be able to find dealers on that site as well. You'll be able to find, our own shops. You'll be able to find all the information and videos on our products. We have a wide variety of products. We do not just, white label bikes that we see that look nice at factories. There are a lot of new companies that are doing that. Obviously, I've been around long enough to understand the nuances and make the difference in the product to really make it a unique value. And at the same time, the new fly-by-night companies, a lot of them are really just trying to focus on buying the customer with price. At the end of the day, it's not a sustainable model. Like there are even companies that are coming online and trying to sell at $1,500 or even below. They're just trying to, trying their luck at getting into the market. Tomorrow, they're not going to be around, and then who's going to service your bike and who's going to give you the support that you need? You're going to throw it to the trash. I mean, even some of so there's some big companies. There's recently a big company overseas, Van Moof, that declared for bankruptcy, and like nobody can get service now. And they were, again, they were pretty. They raised a lot of money and made some unique products, but then they didn't have a sustainable long-term business model. And we believe in that sustainability very much. We're going to be here. We're going to be here for a long time, and we're here to support the customer, support our product, and get our products out there.
Yeah, and the fact that you do mention, being based in Salt Lake City and then having your actual, your 5 flagship stores across the country and then all your dealers, I do know that there has been some brands where customer service is hard to get a hold of, or customer service is not based in the United States. And if all of a sudden there is some sort of a hiccup and maybe you do need to send a bike back or you need to get some maintenance, I feel much more confident, pushing them toward a company that like we know. And so many of our readers are based in California, are based in Utah, in Colorado. I mean, so they can easily get to these centers to go and, either talk to you guys in person or just pick up the phone and call somebody and during the day and get somebody in Salt Lake City and be able to speak to somebody that is just as passionate about the brand and what you guys are doing. Last but not least, how many employees do you guys have total right now?
So right now we're at around 55 employees. So we're a, mid-size, I would say, for the e-bike industry. We have grown over the years. When we started off, obviously we're just a handful of employees. And as we grow our retail, direct to consumer retail shops, I believe that the brick and mortar shops bring a lot of value. Our dealers bring a lot of value. People are thinking to themselves, well, maybe I should just buy online and cut the dealer out. You don't realize until you actually have the product. This is not a commodity product that you're buying like a cell phone that doesn't really matter where you get it from. This is a product that you want a professional to back. You want somebody to be there to, help you service, help you pick out the right accessories, help you service the product in a couple of months from now if you have any questions or any problems with the product, because it is a lot of moving parts, So we're there, not only, we do have a direct-to-consumer online presence. It's a relatively small part of our business. We believe that our dealer network and our own shops that, right now we have 5 flagship shops, like you mentioned. We are growing those flagship shops. We're also growing our dealer network, and they bring a lot of value. Very important to get that customer support, and there's no better customer support than a face-to-face if you can get it. Obviously, if you live in an area that you don't have access to a shop, you can still get our customer support, by phone, by tickets. We have a robust customer support team. That's a very important part of our business. All out of Salt Lake City. Very proud of that part of our business.
Yeah, no, again, in the times that I've spoken to your team and, Hank and everybody involved at Magnum so far, it's been real easy to get a hold of you guys. And I look forward to when we can kind of meet in person at one of the next, big trade events. And we're happy to keep telling this Magnum story. And I do think, like we both said, it's really important to build that relationship with your local dealer, because at some point you will want to get your bike serviced. And if you've already bought your bike there and you've already built that relationship, it's probably just going to be that much easier to get the bike serviced. And then that, when you decide to buy a second bike for your family, you can go and you can ask the professionals and then kind of go and read our reviews. And then at that point, kind of go and in person, because at the end of the day, I still think that the professional bike shops should be the ones that are putting these bikes together. I mean, they do have motors. I mean, they're, it's not quite a motorcycle, but I like to know that the pros have done it.
That was such an important point that you made. Putting the bike together, I read so many articles on, unfortunately, people getting injured or lawsuits to primarily these direct-to-consumer like online companies, because they're shipping bikes and then they're just expecting anybody to be putting them together without necessarily having the skills. So that's a really important point for safety. I want to just emphasize that. And I think you guys at Mountain Weekly are doing like an amazing job reviewing the products, really getting people to understand, the value behind the various products and the differences between them, because there's a lot of confusion out there right now, and it's really important to get something that's good quality and a solid brand and company that's standing behind it.
Well, Yoni, thanks again. I really appreciate you kind of explaining the background of Magnum bikes and talking about kind of the differences in the drive systems. And yeah, we're really excited to work with you guys in the future on, not just the mountain bikes, because that's kind of all we've talked about, but you guys have an entire line of e-bikes. So it's not just for that mountain bike consumer, but for us, like that's what we saw. And we're like, ooh, we want to try this. And it was something new and something hot, but we're also really excited to kind of try your full line. And it seems like mountain biking, or just the the e-bike industry in general, we're just barely scratching the surface right now in the United States. And so it's really fun to be a part of an industry that is just, it's booming, and everybody's talking e-bikes right now. So we wish you guys the best of luck, and anything we can do to help you, please let us know. And for all of our consumers, definitely be sure to check out Magnum bikes. And I would definitely go ride one in person, because if you jump on one, you're probably going to pull your checkbook out and your credit card right then, and want to make that purchase.
Thank you so much, Mike. And really, we're in the business of making people smile. So get on an e-bike, and I promise you'll have a big, big Magnum smile.
I love it. The Magnum smile. Great. Thanks again, Yoni.
The
Take care.
Magnum smile. Take care. Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Bye. All right. Well, that wraps up our episode number 56 of the Everything Snowboarding Outdoors and More podcast. This week's sponsor, once again, was Magnum Bikes. For more information on Magnum Bikes, check out magnumbikes.com. And better yet, go find one of the local dealers and take one for a test ride.